welcome to Hyperstructures, Public Goods, ReFi, oh my. And I am excited to be joined here by Kevin Owocki, one of the co-founders of Gitcoin. I almost feel like you don't need an introduction here. And the co-authors of Green Pill and Impact DAOs.
Hello, thanks for having me. What's up, everyone? I know that you're interviewing me, but I'm going to ask you a question. So Hyperstructures, something in ReFi, oh my, is that a lions and tigers and bears oh my meme?
Something like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Xochitl Cazador, and I lead ecosystem growth at the Celo Foundation. So wanted to start with a quick pulse. How many of you in the room are green-pilled?
Woo.
All right, I won that bet. I bet one of my colleagues that it would be over 75%. Awesome. So before, I guess, let me just take a step back. Green Pill had a profound impact on me, and I think many others in this room. Regenerative finance is something that's very special to, yeah.
I'm listening. I'm just going to grab some swag and put it up front as we're
awesome.
talking about the book. Yeah.
Yeah. Regenerative finance is very special to me, and I think many members of the Celo community. Celo was launched on mainnet launch was on Earth Day of April 2020. From our Genesis block, a percentage of the block rewards were allocated towards carbon offsets. To date, 3,000 tons of carbon have been offset, and there are 30,000 plus tons of carbon offsets held in the reserve. I wanted to start while you're getting the swag out for everyone, just really by asking kind of what inspired this movement that I think you've created. You've taken this concept and really made it very memeable and approachable to so many people.
Yeah. All right, now I can munch on my green pills during our conversation.
Can I help?
Yeah, here, take a green pill before we start. Make my answers sound smarter. I think that I dedicated the book. So first off, the book is called Green Pilled, How Crypto Can Regenerate the World. And I wrote it because I have two small kids, and it might be. It would suffice to say that when I look at them, I worry about systemic risk of accelerating technology and exponential economic growth relative to a linear materials economy, and so I just worry a lot about systemic risk and the fact that our institutions, it feels like in the industrial age, are kind of declining or losing consumer confidence. And I kind of wanted to build like a techno, high-tech, high optimism sort of like bridge into how I think that this technology can be used for good. And so that was kind of the genesis of the Green Pill book. But it was also kind of a recognition, Gitcoin's been around since 2017, and we're doing quadratic funding, and I used to go up on these panels and just shill quadratic funding, and I probably will in this panel too. But Green Pill was about creating a more inclusive umbrella of people who are building other regenerative systems and all packaging them under one category. And so I think Celo is obviously one of those things, and Gitcoin is one of those things, optimism is one of those things. And it's about creating an umbrella and a narrative around crypto being used for regenerative ends was the goal.
Awesome. And can you share with everybody, I think, the story behind Lunarpunks as well?
Yeah. So basically, there's sort of a question of in the Ethereum community. And in the Web3 community and in the Celo communities, what are our values and why are we building this technology? And I think that there's one camp of people who are sort of like the cypherpunks who want to build around self-sovereignty and privacy, and that's the cypherpunk manifesto and vision. There's the solarpunk manifesto and vision, which is basically around high-tech futurism, high-tech, high-optimist futurism, which is basically around solving our contemporary problems with sustainability and coordination failures. Like climate change is the most prominent example, but there are other ones like biodiversity risk and stuff like that. And so, anyway, cypherpunk and solarpunk, they merged together in Lunarpunk, which is both sovereignty-centric and privacy-preserving and all about sustainability. So there's been sort of just a debate in the community about what are our values and what are we actually shooting for with this technology. And Lunarpunk has been this really fertile ground where the cypherpunks and the solarpunks can sort of build together for a shared vision.
That's awesome. I think it's a nice segue into decentralized societies. So one of the reasons that I was really drawn to crypto was this potential to democratize technology and democratize wealth. My mom is from a very small town in Mexico that didn't have running water or electricity. I've seen firsthand how access to basic financial tools can change lives. And while that's benefited me, I feel like at times that's left a lot of my community behind. And I think that's true for most of society, right? It benefits kind of few, and there are a lot of people that are left out. I wanted to kind of just talk a little bit about this concept of regenerative society and what that means, and kind of like how hyperstructures and the work that we're doing kind of fits in. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I guess the first thing to say is that I don't have all the answers, and I'm just kind of creating this mimetic Schelling point that people can gather around. And what's neat is that the mimetic Schelling point can fit some really like PhD caliber, really on the grounded research in it that I just haven't done. So Greenpill is a headless brand, and I've basically offered to the community that they can write a second edition or offshoots or do whatever they want with it. So I guess the answer is that I don't really exactly know, but basically, what I would like to see is a capital rotation away from projects that have the best Ponzi-nomics and into projects that capital rotation and talent rotation away from the projects that have the best Ponzi-nomics and into the ones that have the most real-world impact. I think that's how we solve for this. I'm not sure if that exactly answers your question.
So, and I think what you're saying though is spot on. I mean, I don't think any of us have the answers. I think that's what I love about the Web3 communities. Like, how do we bring all this knowledge that we have together to try and solve, some of these problems? I think for me, what I'm really intrigued by with hyperstructures is this concept of something that it can exist, on its own. And I think that, where we failed, there's a potential to have something that that can help, right? Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so that's right. You asked me about hyperstructures, and I didn't talk about hyperstructures at all. So hyperstructures are an idea from Jacob Horn from, I think, Zora. And basically the idea is that it's kind of like an institution. It's like a network state institution. So basically think of it as like a smart contract that you deploy once, and it runs free forever without intermediaries and without interference. So like Uniswap is an example of a hyperstructure because it has this trading interface, and you don't actually have the liquidity provider. Like, you don't have to be CZ to be a liquidity provider on Uniswap. You can just be anyone. And so it's just this like Schelling point for economic activity within a blockchain system. And what's cool to me about the idea of hyperstructures is that this is where we're going to build our new institutions in the information age. I think they're all going to be hyperstructures. So something that's extremely resilient and can run forever without intermediaries and interference, like that sounds a lot like an institution. And at a time in which our old institutions are sort of declining, it's cool to me and hopefully probably important for the world one day that we could build these hyperstructures that support the public good. And I think that's what's exciting to me about hyperstructures.
Awesome. Let's shift and talk a little bit about public goods. So just a quick poll, how many in the room have been a recipient of a Gitcoin grant or funded a Gitcoin grant? Awesome.
Woohoo.
Yeah. Quadratic funding for me really also kind of revolutionized the way we've been thinking about funding projects within the Celo ecosystem. We have an on-chain community fund as well as a foundation fund. And to date, I think there have been 400 grants that we've awarded, a little over $100 million and in grant funding. And the number of applicants just continues to rise. And what I really loved about quadratic funding, we piloted a Gitcoin round this past quarter, is the opportunity to engage the community more and the decision making, to really kind of create these signals in terms of what are the projects that they're most excited about, but also begin to contribute to them as well. I'd love to kind of just hear more about Gitcoin grants, the vision for 2.0, which we're totally behind, and just kind of share more about that.
Yeah, totally. Well, first off, big fans of the Celo ecosystem and what you're all doing with the ReFi summer meme and giving access and just the regenerative memes. Like, I feel total kinship with y'all, and I think about partnerships as social interop, and then you have technology interop, and then you have economic interop. Maybe you get there, maybe you don't. And so I just want to like say that foundation of shared values around regen is like how we get to the technology interop, which is Gitcoin grant servicing the Celo ecosystem. But anyway, yeah, Gitcoin grants is basically first off, it's built on quadratic funding, which is not my idea. Vitalik and Glenn Weil and Zoe Hitzig came up with the idea. I'm just kind of like a web developer / meme lord that's been marketing it. And basically the idea is that every quarter on Gitcoin will deploy let's call it $100,000 on in a matching pool, and we'll match contributions from the crowd. And the way the protocol works is that it matches off of the number of contributors your grant has, not the amount that it's been funded. And what's powerful about that is even a $1 contribution can result in tens, $50, $100, $1,000 worth of matching. So it really gets you over that free rider problem of like, why would I give to this ecosystem public good? Well, you're only giving $1 and they're getting $300. So like, take out your wallet. And what's really neat for you, as the Celo ecosystem lead about that, is that now you have you've pushed power away from your central grant team to the edges, and also like we talk so much about decentralizing power, but like decentralizing stress is like a big thing. So yeah, signal generation from your community of what they want to fund, and you kind of double your money because the community funds it along with you. So that's the idea with Gitcoin grants, and it's really elegant. I could not have thought it up. Vitalik and Glenn did. And so the last thing I'll say is that we started Gitcoin grants like totally YOLO in the 2018 market. It's kind of like slapped together by myself and another couple coders, and like we're at the end of life of our 1.0 code base, and it's time to go decentralized and modular. And so we're deploying a EVM-based grants 2.0, which will be a protocol, not a platform. And we're like halfway through the build out of it. And yeah, I would be really thrilled if the Celo ecosystem could adopt Gitcoin grants 2.0, and we could help to solve your problems. But this time, instead of us doing it with a platform, we'll do it with a hyperstructure, hopefully.
I love it. We're there. And just big shout out to Scott and Connor and other folks in your team. I think, very big thought partners with us as we've been thinking about this evolution. It's been great.
Yeah. Just one slight, I guess, pushback is that they're not my team. They're in the DAO, and I'm not the CEO of the DAO.
So, I want to talk about DAOs as well. But yes, I think collective team.
Yep.
Right. Cool. So just impact DAOs. Have been thinking a lot about success, how we measure success in Web3. Today, when we look at projects, we tend to evaluate them based on like the total value locked or market cap. And in 2019, one of my colleagues, Willie, wrote this paper called Celo's Theory of Change. And so before Mainnet, we were really thinking about how we evaluate success of the Celo platform. And we sort of boiled it down to like 4 big themes. One was basic needs are met. It's like, shelter, food, medicine, as an example. People are growing along their path, so they're learning, they're developing whatever is special and unique to them. People are helping support each other, and we're working together to save the planet. You've spoken a lot about proof of impact. I feel like we're in the early days of, really onto something, right? In terms of how we begin to measure this, on chain. Would love to hear from you kind of what inspired you. I mean, talk about meme lord. Proof of impact is so dope. I think I sent a message to Renee right after I heard you say that. But yeah, would love to kind of just hear your vision for that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing that you've got to start with is that I'm extremely privileged to not have a lot of those problems that I have to worry about in my day-to-day, like shelter and food. And I think that you kind of have to start by examining your own privilege when you start to solve these problems. And where that for me leads is trying to create generalized solutions that are a channel for greater combinations of strength and intelligence to come together, where communities can organize around their local needs. And because it's open source and forkable, communities can pull down the software into their local communities and like, say, run a quadratic funding round for their own community according to their own values. And so the thing is that like me as a software developer, I don't even know what those values are because I'm not in those communities, and nor would I claim to know those values. So I think that you have to approach it with that attitude. And I'm always finding new ways to examine my privilege and what I don't know. But anyway, I'm really excited about how quadratic funding can localize to local needs. And then you asked me about proof of impact, which is basically the idea that, okay, so who knows about carbon credits? Okay, all right. I'm just like pulse check of the crowd over here. Imagine you could generalize carbon credits to other types of impact. Instead of just you take 10 tons of carbon out of the atmosphere, what if you could take 10 people out of poverty? What if you could stop species extinction risk, and you could have a impact credit for that? What if you fund 1,000 hours of open source software development? You could get an impact credit for that. And so we have partnered with, well, we just kind of actually put the idea out there, and lots of people seem to be really excited about impact certificates. And now there's teams that are building them basically as NFTs. And we kind of imagine a world in which every impact DAO is issuing impact certificates whenever it creates impact on any of these vectors, not just carbon, but on any vector. And you know, we have to have some way of credibly neutral governance over this, where we can say this impact certificate is really legitimate and this one is dog shit, and like being able to tell the difference between claimed impact and proof of impact is like there's a big like there's a big like draw the rest of the owl question in there. But assuming we can cross that barrier, then one of the things that's exciting to me is like, okay, so you've got lots of impact certificates being issued. The next thing you do is you go in and you create buy pressure for those impact certificates. And you know, maybe we bootstrap it by just making every Gitcoin grants donation into an impact certificate purchase instead of a donation. Maybe we go to Vitalik or someone and we say, hey, tweet about impact certificates. And if we can create enough buy pressure for impact certificates, what we've done under the total market for impact certificates, underneath of that number, is we've just changed the incentive of every DAO out there from how much value can I capture to how much value can I create. So all these impact DAOs instantly have a business model. If you have an impact certificate ecosystem that is deeply liquid, that is legitimate, and there's buy pressure, then you've just systemically changed the incentives of DAOs. And that's what I think is a really exciting, but it's a total moonshot. I think we're in the first inning of actually trying to build out that ecosystem. So that's what you meant by proof of impact, yes. I think? Okay, yes, cool.
Yes, yeah. And just for context, for those of you that are new to the Celo ecosystem, there are a lot of really beautiful projects that are focused on things like this. So Impact Market with UBI, Rhoda, under-collateralized loans for Venezuelan refugees, and of course, like projects like Toucan and Flow that are working on carbon offsets. And I think for me, what's really exciting about this, like how do we start to look at this like individually as those projects, but start to almost establish this standard that we can look at across various ecosystems, which I think would be really, really cool. Yeah. We were talking a little bit about DAOs, and I also want to honor a lot of the people in this room that are working on DAOs. It's a big theme for today, yes. And I have really just been drawn by the evolution of the Gitcoin DAO. It's been really amazing, I think, to see how engaged the Gitcoin community is. And I love the quarterly budget proposals and just the engagement that you all have like with your community, and kind of really again like giving them that voice, and just the level of transparency and the dialogue. I'd love for you to kind of share about that evolution of the Gitcoin DAO, and specifically I think talk about like just like that engagement, and what others in this room should be thinking about as they're forming their own DAOs.
Yeah, well, it's nice that you think it looks graceful on the outside, because it can feel like a battle royale on the inside, which doesn't always feel good. But basically, okay, so let's start with why DAO. Gitcoin's mission is to build and fund digital public goods, and we realized that a company is not compatible with that mission, because a company at least in the United States, has a fiduciary obligation to create returns for shareholders, and therefore it'll always be looking for ways to extract from the community and the public goods that it's building. Okay, so companies don't work. There's this new greenfield territory of DAOs. I think that in like 2017 with ICOs, we all had a bad taste in our mouth around tokens, and so tokens were not hot until I think it was Yearn. Yearn was the first governance project that launched around a DAO, and just out of the primordial soup of that, we got Wi-Fi, and we got, I think, the governance tokens, and DeFi Summer got really interesting then. And so basically, there's this new greenfield opportunity with DAOs where hopefully we can align the incentives of our constituents better. And like the whole thing that's really exciting about this for me is that I've been in that situation before. Like I did a bunch of Web2 startups before Gitcoin, and I remember this point in which we had this online dating marketplace, which is a whole another story, is the online dating stuff. But at some point, the VCs were just like, okay, now it's time to like extract from your users. And I was like, oh fuck, like this is what I'm going to be doing with my working life now. And that startup didn't work out. But anyway, so like I always wanted to avoid that moment with Gitcoin of like when the VCs are like, all right, let's like turn on that model. And so with what we basically wanted to do was we recognized that the consent of the governed is the only legitimate basis of governance in political theory, and as opposed to like the divine right of kings. And so how could we make the consent of the governed the foundational loop of how decisions were made at Gitcoin? Well, the answer is that you drop a governance token to all of your constituents and who have used the platform, and then they can govern the platform. But then you get stuck on another thing, which is that everyone wants governance tokens and no one wants to govern. Like some of the top DAOs only have like 3 or 10% of people actually voting on each thing, and those 3 or 10% are just the VCs and the whales that have big tokens. So how do you get around that? Well, we use delegation, and basically like we're all standing on the shoulders of giants, and basically our one innovation was that when you got the airdrop, you had to take a proof of knowledge, which was basically, do you understand Gitcoin's mission? And then you had to do a proof of participation, which was either you voting yourself on a proposal or delegating to someone that was going to be active on your behalf. And so what we've done is we've taken all 15,000 token holders, and all of their votes now aggregate into like 100 people that we can actually have an engaged dialogue with, and they can maintain the consent of the governed through their constituency. So anyway, that was the genesis of the DAO, which you have to understand to answer your question, which was how has the Gitcoin DAO evolved? And the answer is basically there's a metronome. Every season at Gitcoin, we have a Gitcoin grants round. We do a retrospective and we say, oh shit, that didn't work, or that went really well. And then we have a budgeting season in which we all propose how we're going to augment for the next season. Things get funded or they don't get funded, and then we repeat. So it's like an optimization game, like an iterative optimization game that we do. And I have to stop saying we, because I just disassociated from leadership in the DAO like 2 weeks ago. So making it like a self-governing structure has been a real journey, but I would just really encourage people to think about their DAO as an iterative launch, not a big bang out of the box, because there aren't you can't possibly solve all the problems up front, and if you can just solve a cadence or establish a cadence where the community is solving it together and climbing that global maxima, that's what our approach has been. So we're on season 15 now of DAO governance. The seasons, we're kind of cheating because it's really like season 3 or 4 of DAO governance, but we've counted the existing Gitcoin grants rounds from 1 to 15, and now we're like 15 iterations in on quadratic funding.
What do you wish there was more of?
At the DAO?
Yeah.
What I wish there was more of? Alignment. Yeah, it's always like funny to like go out and be like the it's all coordination guy, and then you like come back to your DAO and there's like a big coordination failure sitting in front of you waiting for you.
I think you tweeted something about the coordination aspect of it as well, like just some of the skills that are needed in a DAO, right, to participate in one. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a certain amount of skills around emotional intelligence and self-management and seeking feedback from those around you that we've seen people be really successful with, and some people have sort of struggled in that environment. There's also a lack of accountability when you don't have a boss, because we still have that skeuomorphic idea of like your boss or your manager is what's bringing you accountability, but really your accountability should come from your peers. And sometimes it's tough for people to build those skills of asking for honest feedback and then not getting defensive by it, myself included.
We're all learning and we're all on our path. So you had a big announcement this week with Passport. You want to share that with the team here?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So quadratic funding, because it optimizes for the breadth of your community, not the depth, there's this incentive for you to make up identities and cheat the system. And that's the sock puppet problem that's called Sybil resistance. It's a really old problem in computer science and networks. And we we're at the front, we're front and center of Sybil attacks. Like you guys, if you saw the Sybil attacks on Gitcoin grants, you'd be like, oh, that's cute. But then there's like some more major ones that are really hard. And everyone people that I talk to are like, oh, Kevin, I want to do a Sybil resistant airdrop, or like I want to measure Gini coefficients, or I want to do quadratic funding, but I don't want to have to deal with the Sybil resistance thing. And so basically what we did was we took our 15 seasons of learning about Sybil resistance from what we built on Gitcoin, and we built a decentralized protocol that allows you to attest to your humanity and attest to other people's humanities by collecting these things called stamps. So it's a passport, you gather stamps. They're stored in Ceramic, which is a decentralized mutable data store network, and they're stored as DIDs, which is this W3C standard for digital identity documents. And anyway, so it's like one line of API to get Gitcoin grants Sybil resistance is the answer to your question.
Congrats on that.
Right as we hit zero.
Yeah, we did hit zero. So we are at time. I just want to thank you for being here with all of us. And again, just huge shout out to the Gitcoin community and the Celo community. It's been great to see them come together.
Hope to get to you all a whole lot more, get to know you all a whole lot more. And if you're in the audience and you want a copy of the Green Pill book, which is all about how crypto can regenerate the world, then come up and I'll give one to you. Would love to say what's up after this. And thank you for the fireside. This was awesome.
Thank you.